Hey, deserving listeners. So I was recently in an Idubbbz content cop video, as some of you know, and I wanted to make a follow-up video of my own. But first, I thought we would watch a little clip of the interview that Ian actually pulled from to include in his content cop video.
Are you in pain? Are you remembering the pain of
Yeah.
what was hurting at that time? What is the pain?
I think just being like super lost and not feeling like I have any control over anything. But I will say that Anissa was like my only amount of like stability during that. So like that kind of helped me in a way.
Yeah.
Because she was very, I mean, she was experiencing it too, but I think she was much more grounded, like leading into it. So, you know, I also see the dynamic of Ethan and Neil, and I'm like, fuck, like, it's just really, it's really hard to be, a couple online and see people attacking your partner, and it's like, okay, like if you come to their defense, that doesn't always help them, right? Sometimes that makes it worse for them. So I'm seeing Ethan go through a lot of that, Ethan and Hila.
Okay, so I wanted to use that clip as an introduction to this video. I'll show more from that interview later on. So recently I was in an Idubbbz video, a content cop video. The first content cop video that he has published in 7 years. In this video, Idubbbz goes after Ethan Klein. The video, of course, has millions of views. Everyone is talking about it on the internet right now. And I have heard from a lot of you saying that you're worried about me because you know about the toxicity of these kinds of dramas, and this drama specifically, and the larger drama about the war in Gaza. And along these lines, the online assholes have already showed up in my inbox, of course. I knew that this would happen, and I wasn't planning on doing this, but I thought that I would provide a little video here describing my involvement in the video. So first off, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I have been a therapist and a professor since around 1997, and I started this podcast, Psychology in Seattle, in 2008, 17 years ago. And I have been making all sorts of content, psychology related. So I thought the best way to explain my involvement in Idubbbz content cop video was to give a brief summary of the chronology up until this point. So I took some notes here. Back in May of 2023, so 2 years ago, many people were asking me to analyze an apology video by Idubbbz. I only knew Idubbbz from Creator Clash, which was the year prior. So I didn't know what he would be apologizing for because I didn't know what he was known for or what he had published prior. So I watched his apology video and analyzed it, and I gave him a B. And to my surprise, he commented on the video, which was interesting because that doesn't usually happen. And I came to learn that he and his wife, Anissa, have been fans of my channel. Then about a year later, in February of 2024, so about a year ago, Stacy and I, my wife, we were at a breakfast joint here in Seattle, and Ian and Anissa, if you don't know, Idubbbz, his name is Ian. Ian and his wife, Anissa, approached our table because they saw us walk in. We connected and started talking about being on each other's podcast. And then we started to chat more off air and text each other and stuff. And I would watch one of his unboxing videos and laugh, and I would text him and say, that was a funny bit there, or whatever. And I, over time, started to learn more about their lives. Even on the podcast, we talked about their lives and the history of their childhood and their families, and also what they went through regarding the recent cancellation or internet drama that they had been going through. And it might surprise many of you that Ian, off air, is very soft-spoken. He's a really good listener, actually, as well. In fact, my wife only knows Ian through meeting him in person. And when she saw the Content Cop video, the one right here with Ethan, my wife was actually surprised at how brazen and how outspoken he is in the video. The other thing that is notable is that it was pretty clear to me that he deeply regretted what he had done before online, that he knew now just how bigoted and toxic and hurtful it was. I'll never forget him telling me a story. I don't know if it was on the air or not, but he was at a public event of some sort, and one of his fans approached him and said, "Look, I know you don't like my people," meaning trans, "but I'm a big fan, so can you sign this?" or something like that. And in that moment, Ian just, his heart broke and sunk and was hurting because he thought, oh, this is a human being. This is someone, and they're a fan. They know that I don't like them just because they're trans. Like there's something terribly wrong with my career at this point. And that had been a buildup. He had started to notice the way that the internet was, or the way his fans were, or the monster that he had created online because his fans were going after people, that kind of thing. And so he started to seriously question what he was doing. And so he started to not make that kind of content anymore. But he wasn't being vocal about his change of heart, and he was investigating it even further, through therapy, self-reflection, talking to his wife, experiencing the kind of bullying that she went through and the kind of toxicity that she was experiencing. And then he was starting to think, am I a part of that online bullying? I'm watching someone that I love go through that bullying. Am I one of those bullies? Not to Anissa, but to is there another Anissa out there that I've been attacking? And having that empathy, right? When people exhibit lack of empathy, usually it's because they haven't been given an opportunity to understand what other people are going through. When you understand what other people are going through, it gives you an opportunity to have your natural empathy engaged, and that's what happened for him. Now, I want to say that a lot of you actually reached out to me when I started to collaborate with Idubbbz, telling me that I should not be collaborating with him because of the things that he has done. And those kinds of conversations are important. And if I were to blanketly endorse everything that he had done in the past, then that would be horrible of me, actually. But a lot of things are exhibited and playing out in my relationship with Idubbbz. One is that just on a personal level, I can relate to the online hate that he and Anissa received. I have only experienced 1% of that, but even that 1% was very hard to deal with emotionally. And when I would reach out to other content providers, they would almost always say things like, well, you just have to have a thick skin. And I thought, okay, I need to have a thick skin. Well, that didn't work for me. And I began to wonder if a lot of people were saying you have to have a thick skin because they didn't know what else to say or do, and that a lot of people were suffering. And then recently, over the last couple of years, I saw a lot of YouTubers with millions of subscribers closing shop and not making videos anymore because I think, and they would say sometimes, that it was because of their fans, even the way that they talk to the content provider. So I started to wonder if I might actually have to figure this out on my own, and that other content providers don't have an approach or a system or any sort of wisdom about how to cope with this. And I thought, well, I've been through a lot of therapy myself. As a profession and as a professor and as a content provider, it's important that I at least try to understand our psychology and our experience and how to deal with things. And there's some parallels to being a professor and a therapist. And so I have my own approach. And so to see someone else go through this and to have them experience the fallout, even if I might say he deserved to have some fallout from what he put out there into the world for a number of years, the feelings and the experiences, I think, are not only personally interesting to me, but I feel like I want to provide a way of talking about this, because there's this notion out there that you will hear a lot of people say that, well, they're famous, so then the gloves can come off, right? They know what they're getting into, or they're rich and famous, so it doesn't matter if we bully them or hurt them or try to attack them. You know, they're a public figure. They know what they signed up for. And what I would say to that is, just because someone's a public figure, then you can be a psychopath? No. And there's a lot of pain and loneliness in the world, and people are trying to cope with it in a variety of ways. And one of the ways that we've known about even before the internet is through social comparison and bullying. When you are on the playground and you see a bully, everyone understands that that bully is not dealing with emotions well, that they are not confident, that they are not secure, that probably bad things are happening at home, right? Well, a lot of people have bad things that have happened in their past and present, and they go online and they take it out on other people, and it's understood among society that it's completely okay to unrelentingly bully a public figure, even if they're just a public figure on YouTube, right? So that kind of thinking needs to change, which, you know, it makes sense that society doesn't really understand that yet. The internet is relatively new. Content providers and their feelings are relatively new, that sort of thing. So there's that. The other reason why I'm interested in all of this is because if we're going to make the world a better place, and we're going to see eye to eye, understand the other side of the aisle, reach out to other groups of people to try to work together, if we're going to do that, then we have to stop interacting with other people online the way that we tend to interact with other people online. And I saw an opportunity with Idubbbz, not only just for his sake, but also just for my mission to try to make the world a better place, by demonstrating that through love, and I don't use that word lightly, but through love, through understanding, through, I believe, an accurate understanding of the human condition, we might actually be able to push things forward in a positive way for everybody. Because the way that people tend to react to these things is through cancellation and hatred and black and white thinking, which leads us to a lot of the ills of society today and in the past. So I saw an opportunity with Idubbbz to change and reemerge as a content provider with his new paradigm of empathy and understanding other people's experiences, and still providing entertainment and meaning and purpose. So I thought this would be a good example of this sort of thing, because it almost never happens, right? You know, you've all heard of, or even you know someone maybe, who is a bigot, right? Well, we want, obviously, that person to not be a bigot anymore. And the typical way of reacting to them is through hatred and anger and attacking that person. And maybe they deserve some of that, but that's not usually what changes the person, right? It often just makes them worse. And we have seen that in other content providers, people like Joe Rogan, for example. So if we're going to actually get what we want, what my political side wants, it has to be through love. It has to be through understanding and empathy, giving people a second chance, people who exhibit that they want a second chance. We have to give them that chance. Otherwise, no one else will repent. No one else will apologize. No one else will make that choice that Idubbbz made, which was to say, oh my God, I was a bigot. That was horrible. I apologize. I feel bad. If we don't help someone like that, then why would anyone else do it in the future? I'm really passionate about that, again, for personal reasons, but also for the greater good of society, which is the whole purpose of my career. I decided to become a therapist in large part because I wanted to make the world a better place in that way. Going back to my notes, Ian and Anissa were both being heavily bullied. before, during, and after the apology, people were saying things like, Idubbbz, his apology was fake. He's a grifter. He doesn't really care about anybody. He's always been a bigot. He still is a bigot. Or other people saying Anissa is like a Yoko Ono, manipulating him from behind the scenes, that Ian is pussy whipped, this kind of stuff. Or Anissa is a slut because she has an OnlyFans, and Ian is a cuck for even allowing Anissa to have an OnlyFans. If you know, you know, and it's way worse than even I'm describing it. And these aren't just random a-holes on the internet that are rare. This was the dominant discourse around the two of them. So when I was interacting with Ian and Anissa, both on their podcast, my podcast, and off microphone, I noticed that Ian was deeply unsure of himself, and he was deeply ashamed. It was almost like he was cocooning after realizing what he had done and also experiencing the amount of vitriol that he had been experiencing, both from his long-term haters, but also even his own fans, right? Not only experienced the regular sort of criticism, but even his own fans hated him, that kind of thing. So he was, in a very raw way, questioning everything, and also just questioning whether or not he would ever make content again. He was still making some content, but it was more safe for, right, the podcast or an unboxing video or something. And he wondered if he could ever make videos again without it devolving into toxicity and bigotry and hatred, and without it involving the kind of toxicity that happens from the audience, that kind of thing. Or without him 10 years later regretting harming people in that video, right? He was really ashamed, deeply ashamed, and deeply unsure of himself. And by the way, I asked him today if it was okay that I talked about all this, and he said, yeah, you have full license, talk about whatever you want to. So after learning a lot about his life and the sort of things that Ian and Anissa had been experiencing, and also learning about what sort of content he had been making prior, I was suggesting that he start thinking about, if he wanted to, how to make content cop videos that were from his new paradigm. Maybe they wouldn't be called content cop videos, but they would be in his voice that he had developed over time and that the audience was hoping from him again, right? And I was, probably just a minor element of the story for him, the story that he's been on, the therapy and his relationship with Anissa has been very therapeutic for him and Anissa, and just all the ups and downs and trying to figure out how he fits into the creator world. And, I'm just a tiny part of it, but I do remember having that hope that he could come out of this on the other side with a new perspective, a new foundation, start experimenting with his new perspective in a way that could be a force for good. So along those lines, when Ian recently, a couple weeks ago, texted me and said that he was working on a content cop video that he wanted me to be involved in, and I was curious as to what the video was going to be about. And so he told me what it was going to be about, and he showed me some footage of Ethan bullying him and Anissa during some of his live streams. And I agreed to do it because I wanted to support my friends, Anissa and Ian, but also because I wondered if I might be able to, in my small way, enter into the conversation with Ethan, that maybe I could influence the message that would be sent to Ethan. Not that I would manipulate Ian's video or anything, but that my vibe or way might, get to Ethan somehow, because what I was seeing from the clips that Ian was sending me, it very much seemed like Ethan was struggling deeply. This is what Ian was talking about in the Content Cop video, where I said to Ian, it kind of looks like he just needs a hug. And what I meant by that was he seems like he's struggling. When we're struggling and we are terrified and we are in a chronic state of fear, we are going to say things that we wouldn't normally. We're going to think and believe things and see things through a lens that we wouldn't normally. And often those people need love, get away from the fear if possible, so that they can return to baseline. And we can't take what they're saying seriously, or we have to put it within that context. You know, as an analogy, when you have a child, for the analogy I always give is you're teaching your daughter how to ride a bicycle, and you're holding on to the seat as you're trotting alongside of her, and she turns to you and says, "Let go, I want to do it on my own. I want to do it on my own." And you're like, "Okay." And you let go, and she goes for a while, and you're going, "Yay." And then she crashes, and she falls down, and she skins her knee, and you run up, and you're trying to help her. And she screams at you, "Why did you let go of my seat?" Well, in that moment, we as parents don't yell at the kid and say, "You told me to let go of the seat, you jerk face." We don't do that. We understand. When people are going through something, they're going to believe and say things that they wouldn't normally, right? Well, that applies to anyone of any age. That doesn't excuse things, but it explains things and provides a treatment. It provides a path to help them. If you actually are interested in helping Ethan or helping to divert his pathway, whatever that's on, and the influence that he has, then love and understanding is the answer. Not that I'm just like, oh, everything's about love, but it works. And it feels better, and it feels more logical, and I sleep better at night. So I was hoping possibly that he might get some of that message. And the way that it looked to me was that, again, Ethan was struggling with really a classic case of fear and paranoia. He had started with legitimate fears about Israel, Palestinians, Jewish people in general, his wife, his extended family, that sort of thing. His fears were totally justified and legitimate. Then, seemingly, I wasn't there for this progression, but, and actually talking with Ian, he confirmed this path, that seemingly Ethan did not have an approach to managing his mental state and his contact with the news cycle and the comments. When this sort of thing is happening, how much news do you consume? How many if you're a content provider, do you read all the comments? Do you read the entire subreddits, that kind of thing? And he seemed to have an approach that he just absorbs all that constantly. And this is what Ian was getting at in his content cop video, was that his employees are maybe even encouraged by him to feed him everything, and maybe even especially the hatred, because that's what gives him fuel to talk about online. Well, that will do a number on your soul. It's going to affect you. It's going to infect you if you don't have a way of pushing back on it. So he gets more hurt, more angry, more fearful, and becomes more black and white thinking, more reactive. He starts to fight back. Initially, it's probably somewhat justified, maybe sometimes crossing the line. Then those people hear that and they attack back, and more random people are attacking, some of which are justified, but some of which is not, and over the top, this sort of, and racist and anti-Semitic. And then it creates this feedback loop where he gets funneled all that. He has no approach to pushing back. He gets more terrified, more worried, more convinced that the straw man is out there that he's built up in his mind. And he gets more worried, more terrified, more angry, more hostile. That's what he knows how to do. And he goes after them and has spontaneous reactions on his live streams and doesn't seem to have any approach to how to manage what he says other than the button, right? And no one around him seems to be able to or interested in helping him with this. Meanwhile, Ethan's mental state is declining and declining and declining. And then at some point, he hears, as Ian talks about in the Content Cop video, that this random editor with a very small following says something really horrible towards Ethan. And Ethan is fed this information as he's fed almost everything that his people or Ethan himself can find on the internet. I mean, Ethan reads the snark subreddit for H3, which I just find just patently unhealthy for him. There's just no way that can be helpful to him. So he is seeing that this person is saying a toxic thing. He also learns that that person used to work for Idubbbz or might currently, and then he thinks, oh, Idubbbz, I thought he was a friend, and he's not speaking out against that person. And because I'm in such a state of fear and paranoia, and I don't use that word lightly, not because he started that way, but because of the non-management of what he was exposed to. And you just think about what's been happening over the past year and a half for Ethan. Through his paranoia, he interprets that, learning about that toxic thing that someone who used to be associated with Ian before, as evidence that Ian and Anissa are secretly against him. And that hurts him. It makes him feel afraid. This is not the first time this has happened for him in all likelihood. There have probably been other times when it might have been more confirmed or there was better data indicating that someone that he thought he could trust, he couldn't really actually trust, right? Not only could he not trust that person, but that those people were actually a very harmful, scary element in his life, calling CPS on him and supporting that or whatever, right? And you just think about that, right? That when that happens, then when it starts to come into your house, from what I understand, the CPS workers actually entered the house to conduct an investigation. So Ethan goes off on Ian and Anissa on the air again because his style is spontaneous and off the cuff, and there's no guardrails except for that button, which isn't really a guardrail. It just kind of gives, as Ian was pointing out, him more freedom to just say whatever and think. And that's what Ian was getting at in the Content Cop video, was that it seems like Ethan has no boundary or editor in his mind. And the button actually was a solution to a problem that made the problem worse. Because as a content provider, even if you're an edgy comedian online, there has to be some line, some concern about how you're affecting other people, right? Some empathy, right? You'll have an impulse to say something and you'll think, well, it seems kind of funny and appropriate now, but if I were in someone else's shoes, what effect would that have on someone? I probably shouldn't go that far, right? It's not that you're being disingenuous and not saying the truth. You're incorporating the bigger picture. And if you don't have that inside of you, then you're just going to speak completely from whatever just happens to emerge for you impulsively. And Ian made a great case for that. So again, I agreed to be in the video, and he came over to my house and to my home recording studio, and we recorded. This is footage from that. And we talked for over 3 hours. And I, at some point, said, I think we should probably cut this off. And we were having a really in-depth conversation. There were a lot of ups and downs. And so when I handed over all of the footage, I just gave it to him. I was thinking I wasn't going to be in the video because I was thinking, how in the world, in a content, in his style, how could he use anything that we said in that video? Because it was so slow and, in my yammering way, it was slow paced and emotional and vulnerable and nuanced. And I just thought, I can't imagine he's going to use any of that. And I even told him, I said, if you don't use any of this footage, I'm not going to be insulted. Or if you use like 3 seconds, whatever. And I trusted him. And I didn't want to give him the impression that I didn't trust him, because I didn't want to poison the well in that way. I wanted him to go for it. I knew I was taking a risk, but I knew enough of him to trust that at the very least it wouldn't be negative for me. And that approach is something that I learned as a therapist, not only in practice, but also theoretically, that people behave the way that you treat them, the way that you believe in them. Either way, right? If you treat them poorly and don't believe in them, then they tend to behave in ways that are problematic, sometimes to you. But if you believe in people and you say, I know that you can do the right thing, I believe in you, then across the board, and this is demonstrated through empirical observation, that people will behave in more responsible, empathetic, non-problematic ways. Not all the time, but it has a huge effect on people. And that believing in Ian does not mean disbelieving in Ethan or vice versa. So I thought I would actually watch a few clips from the over 3-hour conversation that I had with Ian.
This is dipping my toes in a very there's a lot of controversial topics around it. Ethan's a controversial guy.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I'm happy that you're doing it because, jumping back into the deep end, which the internet needs you now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's funny. So that's the very beginning of the recording, and that's in line with what I was saying earlier. But the main thing that he wanted me to do when we were meeting was to watch this video that he made. Let's watch that video now.
A couple years ago, Ethan Klein was playing a video clip of Cutie Cinderella, a fellow streamer, crying about a very traumatic situation she was going through involving Atrioc and this whole deepfake porn situation. And Ethan Klein very stupidly played a comedic soundbite and he just lost it. He was cackling. Ethan recognized that it was not a good thing to do, so he pretty quickly apologized.
If I had known that the whole video was concluding on me changing the grade, I still would have refused to change my grade, but I would have done it in a much more careful way because I thought that he was just experimenting with different elements of the content cop video. I thought I was going to be one of hundreds of possible things that he would put in, and I thought since I didn't change the grade, I wouldn't even make it in the video. And I asked him about it actually today, and he said that he thought I was going to change the grade, and that when I didn't change the grade, he had to completely rewrite the ending, the epilogue to that hour-long content cop video. And he had to, and maybe influenced to make it more positive. And then he reached out to all those content providers for them to all say something nice in light of what I had done. and I thought, oh my God. I mean, it is what I was hoping. I mean, not that specifically, but that message I was hoping to influence. I didn't realize I would be that pivotal. I didn't realize I was, I can imagine for him being quite disappointed after we had that 3-hour conversation. We hung out afterwards as well, the four of us, Stacy and Anissa and Ian and I, and just, shot the shit.
He pretty quickly apologized. Now that apology was pretty well recognized as a good apology amongst the non-experts, but the experts also weighed in. I mean, as much as you can be an expert in apologies, it's not like an official title or anything, but Dr. Kirk Honda weighed in. Now Ethan was able to hit most, if not all, the points on this grading scale. Basically, this resulted in Ethan getting an A+ apology. You could say that I'm salty because I got a B+.
The other thing that he showed me, and when we were watching this video a couple weeks ago, I asked him, what is this? Did you put together this graphic that has all my apology video grades? Because there was a point a while back where I wanted to actually go back and watch all my apology videos and write down all the grades that I'd given because I had forgotten. Because in some later apology videos, I would be referring to past apologies, and I wanted to be able to contrast grades and the rubric that I use, that kind of thing. And I asked him, I said, did you make this? That's amazing. And he's like, no, H3, Ethan Klein and his people or his fans or something put together this web page, and each is a clickable thing to take you to my video. And it's heavily featured on the H3 podcast or the fan site, I can't remember which, because of how often Ethan talks about it and how vindicating or how praising it is to Ethan, because he is the only one that has maybe even received an A.
The apology, in my opinion, has just served to like boost his ego and kind of give him an out.
You know, he rated my apology to Cutie Cinderella a perfect score, a perfect 10.
A perfect 10 out of 10?
Literally 10 out of 10. Go back. I can teach you how to make a good apology. I'm the best at it.
10 out of 10.
I know what a perfect apology is, lady.
When Ethan initially had talked about my video, my apology analysis of him, people were sending me the link. Oh, like, oh my God, you know, Ethan talked about you. Because people know that I'm a small-time YouTuber, and so they're just like, do you know that a famous person is talking about you? And I took it that way. And I think maybe there was another time that people were sending me, but I just thought that was it. But watching this mashup of all these little clips, I asked Ian, I was like, does he really talk about my grade this often? And Ian said, yes, and the stuff I'm showing you right now is a small portion of the amount of times that he refers to your grade of his apology, which was interesting and flattering, I will say, and I think deserved. It was a good apology. If you didn't watch the apology, watch it or watch my analysis of it. But it was very long, very authentic in his way, very off the cuff, and very acknowledging of the harm. It was way beyond. And I would say that Ian was a close second, as evidenced by that graphic we saw in which he's the only B, right? I think that not only should someone be rewarded for a very rare thing, which is to, in my book, demonstrate very strongly a lot of them core components of an effective apology, but also I think that Ethan, as other content providers, like Ian himself, are almost never given positive feedback. And so anyone saying something positive, I would imagine, would be emotionally very important to him.
You fucking don't. Is my perfect apology in this PowerPoint? Dude, I got a perfect 10 out of 10. This one is actually best apology, so. Ethan Klein, you guys, oh my God.
Okay, so if you don't know, he reached out to me to participate in the Steamies from, was it last year or 2 years ago? I can't remember. And they wanted me to submit an award granting to him in the style of the Steamies. And so I gave them a couple options of videos and they showed it. And so that's what's happening here.
Psychology in Seattle would not be giving this a good rating. In fact, I look forward to him rating it. Probably get pretty low marks.
And yeah, I didn't react to that apology video. I probably just didn't have the time.
And I think that it's more than appropriate for Dr. Kirk Honda to fucking adjust his apology rating, because that's horse shit. So Kirk, this is your opportunity. Ethan has been flaunting this A everywhere.
So I almost am glad that it happened.
Psychology in Seattle. Shout
Yes,
out.
I'm just kidding. If you get an A+ apology, it's almost better. I'm glad I said what I said.
Now, I suppose some people would accuse me of kowtowing to Ethan because I'm getting free publicity every time he talks about it, and if I were to rescind that, I would lose that opportunity. That has not occurred to me. Maybe it's in the back of my mind. That's possible. But I learned a long time ago that that kind of publicity, and even the publicity that I'm getting from being an Idubbbz content cop video, doesn't really translate into followership or money for me. I learned that a long time ago because when you cast a really wide net, you get a lot of different sorts of people, and very few of them would be interested in my kind of content.
In a way, if you want to be like silver lining, it's kind of good that it happened.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but
Give this guy a fucking taste. Now we're getting out of apology territory, but I need to just get some shit out to sweeten the deal for you, Kirk. He used to be the hero.
Okay, so I think this is the portion of the video that is just for me. That's not intended to be in the content cop video. And keep in mind that at this point, Ian is hoping and planning on me changing the grade.
I see you out there, you fucking cockroach.
So now that my presentation is over, I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Kirk Honda to give us a professional opinion, and maybe, if we're lucky, there might be some amendment to Ethan Klein's, perfect apology. Because I don't think this is a perfect apology.
Every time Cutie gets
Listen,
an opportunity to shit on me, she takes it without a batting or
I don't
laugh.
know if that's what is Cutie. I don't think this is Ludwig. They're separate people.
Right. Is it a perfect apology? I don't know if I've used that word. Maybe I have, but that doesn't feel like what I was saying or want to say. I just want to put out there that his apology had all the components that I'm looking for in a public apology and more. So that's an A+. That's all it means. Now, I don't know if you're catching this context, but this is a pretty good zinger to have at the end of this video that's meant for me, that he is later, after the apology to the person that he transgressed upon, Ethan is saying questionable, problematic things that his producer is pushing back on, which is what he often is having to do for Ethan. No, you're interpreting that wrong. And I'll tell you that in a way, I can very much relate to this. I've talked about this before, that I'll get an email or a comment or someone will talk about me online, and it'll initially get me very hurt and afraid, and then I get very angry, and I go to Stacy to either I know I should check in with her or I'm just venting, and 9 times out of 10, she'll say, I saw that email too, and I don't think you're interpreting it right. I don't think that's what they were saying. Or I saw that comment, and I think you need to reread that comment. And at first, I'm like, how dare you invalidate me or something. I don't say that, but that's how it feels at first. But again, 9 times out of 10 from there, I find that she's absolutely correct, that I was overreacting. Or just I'll get a text from a friend and I'll overreact and I'll ask her, or I'll vent and she'll be like, I don't think you're getting that right. Or she'll listen really well, as she always does, and I'll calm down, and then I'll realize I probably should question my initial assumption, which happens sometimes. And so there's that function. The difference is I'm not doing it while I'm being recorded. Ethan does it while he's being recorded. People react to that. I mean, if people saw me in that state, there would be a lot of justifiable, especially if I'm publishing it, you know what I mean? Putting it out there. And I don't rescind it right away, which doesn't usually happen anyway. In my when I'm venting and stuff, I don't immediately say to Stacey, oh, you're right, I was wrong. Sometimes it takes me a while, The difference is that Ethan does it on the air, which is hurtful to those that he's talking about. Then they attack him back, and it just creates that feedback loop. That's another element here.
People say Cutie defends me on her podcast with Maya. Oh, I've seen lots of clips of her shitting on me, but I guess maybe that was all I saw.
So he is initially being hurtful and assuming bad things about the person that he transgressed on, and then the producer's like, no, she's actually on your side. And that's supposed to, from Ian's point of view, influence me to take the grade back. But this is further confirmation of in this little snippet. And we'll rewind this, actually, because I think this is important. It demonstrates that for Ethan, this is him after that progression that I talked about a while back, where he gets hurt and afraid, very hurt, very afraid. He initially has some slightly problematic takes and clapbacks, if you will. And he does it off the cuff, and he's absorbing all of the negativity without any filter, seemingly. Then people fight back, right? And then more people fight back in unfair ways to him, right? Because he's already being somewhat unfair. He gets more paranoid, more afraid, more hurt. He gets more upset. Spontaneous. And so down the line, as he comes across that one, I think, tweet or something by one of Ian's former associates, he gets paranoid that, oh, Ian and Anissa are against me, right? That's not his typical stance. It's not his typical interpretation of that. It's after months and months of his mental state being harmed by himself. He's doing this to him. I mean, people are doing it to him, but he's doing nothing to prevent it, right? and maybe even he knows it's happening. I don't know. Maybe he knows, like, oh, this is good for ratings. You always have to come up with something to say. And I really feel bad for content providers like Ethan who don't have something like me where I have a professional training aspect that I can always talk about, right? I can provide that, only a small percentage of, an audience like what he has are interested in, but, enough of an audience, I can share that information. Whereas if you're just a guy who people think is kind of funny and interesting, how do you come up with something to say? How do you come up with content? You wake up in the morning and say, well, what do I have to offer? And so you'd end up just falling into this pattern of, well, what people are interested in is just me flying off the handle, So I think that might be another element. That doesn't release him from responsibility, of course, but I think is another piece of the context. So let's rewatch this and keep in mind that there's a possibility, I don't know, it's just total speculation on my part, that his mental state has been affected in a way that any of us would be affected by if all of that negativity and hatred and attacking and a lot of it unfair, because we don't see all of the horribleness that, even if you pay attention, you don't see all the horribleness that he might be absorbing. And then he gets this little hint that maybe, I think her name's QT, the woman that was crying about the deepfake porn, and he was laughing, and then he apologized later. And he gets a little glimpse, and then he's so paranoid. He's such a quick, he's got a real itchy trigger finger, goes after the producer. No. And then you can kind of see the gears churning in his mind. It's like, not only is this assumption not true, but the producer's saying, no, she's on your side, she's supporting you. And that in-group, out-grouping is happening. It's like, oh, she's out-group, wait, so she's in-group? And, you can see his brain trying to adjust that.
Every time Cutie gets an opportunity to shit on me, she takes it without a batting or laugh.
I don't know if that's, what is Cutie? I don't think this is Ludwig. They're separate people.
Oh, people say Cutie defends me on her podcast with Maya? Oh, I've seen lots of clips of her shitting on me, but I guess maybe that was all I saw and not the whole thing.
So that's the end of that video, but I don't know if you see what I'm seeing, but that's what I'm seeing, the way I described it earlier.
Anissa and I have experienced the same kind of level of harassment. Makes me feel qualified to talk to him about it, because
So I don't know if you noticed that, but he was on the verge of crying in that moment, or it looked that way to me. So just keep that in mind as we move forward here. But I think this could help to give Ian credibility in his Content Cop video, that he was at first not wanting to make a Content Cop video. He wanted to reach out to Ethan and explain and to make up, right? To have their work friendship, so to speak, reconciled at the very least, and maybe even to result in Ethan publicly rescinding some of the things that he was saying about Ian and Anissa. Not just because Ian and Anissa care, and if you have a friend, even if it's kind of like a work friend, you don't want them to think wrong things about you that results in them hating you, But also because Ethan is talking shit online, which isn't, they already have enough haters and enough harassment and bullies. They don't, those to add to that isn't very happy to think about. So this is him describing it in a more, calm, long manner than he would do in a content video or a Content Cop.
Makes me feel qualified to talk to him about it, because I feel super empathetic, specifically to to that feeling that everyone is an enemy. I had that feeling very much after my apology. There were loads of people who were.
And I am just so happy. I'm sad that Ian had to go through this, but this was part of the change. And this is the part of the change for everybody, me included. When we go through things, or someone close to us is going through things, it gives us a better chance to really feel what it's like to go through that thing. Then when someone else is going through that thing, we have a much greater chance of having empathy for that person. And until that happens, it is hard to have empathy for someone else. Not because we lack empathy, but because it is lost on us why someone is having a reaction that they're having. And Ethan, at least from my understanding, isn't crying on his podcast. He's not talking about the pain and the fear and the terror that he's going through. He's exhibiting the anger, and Ian sees that and understands what's beneath it. And initially was reaching out, even though Ethan was publicly saying horrible things and causing a lot of Ethan's fans to go after Ian and Anissa. What Ian initially felt was empathy, because he had been through that himself. And so that resulted in him seeing Ethan in a compassionate light at first. And so he reached out, gave him the benefit of the doubt. Even though Ethan was giving Ian no reason to do that publicly, the assumption was there because of a common humanity that's understood. And so Ian, and I believe him, and Anissa would talk about this too, that he, behind closed doors, meaning not on the air, it wasn't like he tweeted, "Hey, Ethan, let's talk," as a public showing of goodwill. He texted him off air, if you will, and Ethan still refused to talk with him, right? Which was hurtful and was aggravating, right? Then you feel like you have no power, you have no voice. And then so Ian dusted off his content cop outfit and said, well, I do have access to a voice, and I'm going to use it since I have no other recourse here.
And make you feel like, there's no winning.
Well, I remember people reacting to your apology video were saying that you were grifting or something, that it was all a lie, and you were trying to trick the audience so that you could, I don't know what you'd be tricking the audience, because it wasn't necessarily a good career move. You know what I mean?
No. No, it's been actually terrible for me in making money.
We've talked about that.
It's only gotten worse.
Yeah, but, it's easier to sleep at night, I hope.
Yeah.
And you're clawing back,
Yeah.
And then other people are saying Anissa is pulling all the strings and you're pussy whipped or whatever.
Totally.
And it's just like...
Not that I'm totally pussy whipped, but they're totally saying that I'm pussy whipped.
Yeah. I think it's kind of romantic to be a little pussy whipped now and then, a little mutual heterosexual pussy dick whip, both ways. But
that pussy dick whip reciprocation or mutual whipping became a theme throughout our 3-hour conversation and after. So I guess that's where it started.
Like, I feel it myself, like this, it's so hard for me on my podcast to like loosen up. It's incredibly hard. And to also then make jokes and be funny. I talked about it in my apology, like I am so insecure about my ability to entertain. I think he feels the same, to be honest. I don't think he said as much, but I feel like, to me, it's pretty obvious by how often he like says crazy, fucked up shit, and then also like looks to his producers and employees to be like, was that like a bad thing? Should I button that? Or like, no one's laughing. Like, what? Was that funny or not funny?
So we're towards the ending of our 3-hour conversation. And at this point, I've heard a lot of the background, and we've had a lot of back and forth. Anissa has also been a big part of the conversation. And as he was approaching his thesis or stating his thesis that he would eventually have in his content cop video, or at least an earlier version of it, I was both curious about what his conceptualization is as to why Ethan would refuse to change or not be self-reflective or to not exhibit empathy. I was curious about that, but I also was asking a question that I often will ask my students, actually, in that they'll talk about a client and they'll say, oh, this client, or maybe more commonly, I'll have a student or a trainee or a supervisee or a consultee who will be talking about a client's partner, right? So my student is saying, yeah, so I have this client and she's talking about her husband and about how much of a jerk face her husband is. And if it seems appropriate to ask or helpful to ask, I might ask a very similar question. Instead of just rolling past that the way we typically do, where we're just like, oh, that guy must be a jerk face, I ask my therapist, and it's their job to think about this, whether they have an answer for it or not, but it's incredibly important to have a conceptualization. So I'll ask a conceptualization question. Why do you think the husband does that? You don't have the husband as a client, but hearing through your client, the husband's behavior, what is your initial or what is your hypothesis as to why that would happen? Because if we just go with the typical human or societal response, then it's just writing the guy off as a jerk face, as evil or something, instead of doing the work. And it's hard. And without training, it's almost impossible. Lay people aren't trained in this way. Most therapists are barely trained in this way. I would have to do a lot of work with students by the time they got to me, not to denigrate other professors, but there's just not enough time in graduate school, honestly. And so I asked him that question, like, okay, so you've laid out a very strong argument that Ethan has changed and that he is being more of a jerk face now than he was before, and more toxic, and there doesn't seem to be any guardrails. And you've laid out some of the details about that, the button, the yes men, the absorbing the snark subreddit, that kind of stuff. Why would he do that? What do you think the reason is? And so what that provoked in Ian, because he takes that question to heart, I'll give him credit for that for sure, is to find a pathway. And often a pathway is through looking to yourself as a pathway to empathy, right? So he, as we just saw, Ian's like, well, I can kind of relate because I've been there and I know what can happen to you and that insecurity. And I just wanted to point that out as an element of something. I didn't notice it at the time because I'm not conscious necessarily of that. Again, I'm actually curious as to what he would say, but I'm also always trying to promote the notion, even in my casual conversations, that there's a question there. We might not know the answer, but most people have a logical reason as to why they would be hurtful or harmful or even abusive. It doesn't justify it at all, but it explains it and gives us something to work on. If we can change the factors that lead to the problematic behavior, then we can stop the problematic behavior.
And he's oftentimes very concerned with that. He's looking for the feedback. I think it would probably be good for him to do stand-up or something, an open mic, to actually get an idea or get more in touch with what makes him funny. Because that's something that I like. That's going to be probably a constant journey for me, is figuring out what makes me funny. Or what people like about me or my content. So I just want that for him.
Okay. Did you just touch on something inside of you right now?
Yeah, I think so.
What was that?
Oh, yeah, I've just seen... It's frustrating because
it brings a tear to my eye. I mean, just you sense the pain, right? You feel the anguish. It's deep. This is deep. I noticed a couple times, including that time, that he was tearing up as he would, I think, recall what he had been through himself, which has a lot of complicated feelings. The hurt of the harassment, the deep shame that I know that he feels. I was really surprised that he included a bit of this in the epilogue of his video. And it really makes me wonder, if I wasn't involved, how the video would have ended. Because I actually asked him if I don't know if I've mentioned this already, but I asked him if I hadn't responded the way that I had, how would the video have ended differently? And he said, oh, absolutely. In fact, what did he say here? And again, he's cool with me saying all this stuff. I've asked him. I was texting him saying, I had no idea how important I was to the ending of your Content Cop video. If I had known, I would have been more careful in the way that I refused to change my grade. And then Ian replied and said, you play a really important role in the video. It made me rethink the whole ending, to be honest. And it led to me deciding to get those creators to send me nice comments. So I feel good about that because I like the way it ended, absolutely. But I feel bad about inconveniencing a fellow content provider in that way. So anyway, I also want to provide this for the main reason why I want to make, or one of the main reasons why I want to make this video is that I would imagine that, especially in the past, you would not imagine, if you did watch Idubbbz videos or even knew of him and maybe even disliked him, you would not necessarily know or think or imagine that he would be a normal human being with vulnerabilities. You know, one of the big reasons why I want to make this video is to demonstrate for audience members and for content providers that a thick skin is a myth. No one has a thick skin. You can't protect yourself. What difference does it make if you're a content provider or not? You're a human being, and you cannot protect yourself. No one can, from harassment and bullying and hatred. And we also understand that you can get 10 comments, 9 of which are positive, but 1 that's negative, and everyone focuses on that one negative thing. We all understand, everyone understands that. Content providers understand that every day of their lives. And unless there's a management system that involves not reading every single comment, that involves therapy and perspective and telling the audience, one of the best things that I ever did over time, because it sort of had a crescendo during the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial 3 years ago, I couldn't help myself but to tell people like how it was affecting me, the hatred that was coming my way. By telling my audience that, even people that didn't like me, I think it gave a lot of people the opportunity to understand and therefore have empathy and therefore take care, right?
Fuck. I've really tried hard to like control what I've been putting out online and like what I'm going to react to and think about other people. And it was like, at minimum like a full year of me like really questioning like everything I was putting out. And I had some confidence at the start of that, but like every video I put out, I'd be like, oh shit, like the views aren't good. The comments aren't good. Like, I don't know. Like, it just kept getting worse and worse. And so, now that I feel like it wasn't overnight, like me gaining my confidence back, and I'm still probably not all the way there, but like,
does he deserve to feel some amount of concern or pain, or does he deserve some consequence for the bigotry that he put out there? You can answer the question how you want to, but I would answer that question, yes. It is fair that he experience some level of consequence, and that consequence could cause him some level of pain and insecurity. And as he acknowledges it and apologizes for it, he also deserves love and an opportunity for redemption and care and acceptance of the new him. Both of those things can happen at the same time. People that are fans of Idubbbz, even when he apologized, would say, you don't have to apologize, don't do that to yourself. Haters of him would say, he's just faking it. Or in this moment, they might say, well, you deserve it, motherfucker, whatever. both are true, and both have to be true if we're going to make the world a better place. If people are going to be invited to change and welcomed to change and attracted to change, then we have to have the approach of both. There are consequences and there is a path to redemption. And if you take that path, we will absolutely be there for you.
I feel like I have a much clearer idea because I didn't take like an easy route, or I didn't like fight back, or when I say easy route, I basically mean to say that I didn't go for the drama or the things that I know would get like views or attention. Mm-hmm. Because I am familiar with it, but I know that it's just going to lead me to the same kind of place.
Which was what?
Which is being unhappy and regretful.
Yeah. Regretting what?
Hurting people, just making like content that like didn't align with like my beliefs or principles.
So there it is, right? People can do bad things, very problematic things, hurtful things, post it on the internet and do it over the span of months and years and still be a good person. And how can that be? It happens all the time. Ethan, I assume the same thing is happening, but on a much larger scale or a current scale or a worse version of it because of the factors that we've been talking about, the landscape of his family, CPS, the way that Ethan makes content, the way that he absorbs comments and subreddits and stuff. The button, as Ian has been pointing out, it can be even worse. And if we have consequences and we criticize, but welcome and invite and tell them there is a way out, there's an escape, and I believe in you, then we see change. So I don't need to say this, I don't think, but I hope that this helps to provide some understanding of what people go through, content providers, even other sorts of public figures, actors, politicians even, so that you know what it can feel like and how rare it is that they will display these feelings. And if they do even allude to them, just how much hatred that they get or dismissal that they will get.
I also see the dynamic of Ethan and Neela. I'm like, fuck, like, it's just really, it's really hard to be a couple online and see people attacking your partner, and it's like, okay, like if you come to their defense, that doesn't always help them, right? Sometimes that makes it worse for them. So I'm seeing Ethan go through a lot of that, Ethan and Neela. And, yeah, I really relate heavily to the harassment that they're getting, and, I see them kind of like, turn away from friends, lean more into money, get a lot more like flippant and a lot more like aggressive toward people, and I'm just like, fuck, that is.
So a major reason as to why he made the content cop video, I think, was because he's trying to help in his way. I don't know if it will help. One could argue if it was really trying to help, it would have been less negative, so to speak, towards Ethan. But then one could argue maybe you have to be that pointed in your critique for it to break through and to get any sort of views and attention, that kind of, I don't know. But I think it's convincing that he cares about the two of them, Ethan and Neela.
Not ultimately going to like solve it for you.
You could see, so that's that Y in the road.
Yeah.
You took the healing, touching grass, or touching marriage route away from the internet toward stability and attachment and love, whereas he's taking the other path, which is to go on the offense and to maybe convince himself that he's right and everyone else is wrong, and he doesn't care. You know, you can imagine having that defensive, just, I don't give a shit what everyone, when you absolutely do care what people think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you allowed yourself to feel that feeling.
Yeah.
Now and back then. But you could see how you could harden.
Yeah.
And toughen up.
Totally. It's been very tempting, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if I had the button like he has, I'd fucking hit it all the time.
Yeah. So I think that's all that we'll watch. It ends pretty quickly after this, but I think that's a good representation of the overall conversation that we had for over 3 hours. So for those of you who never watched the Content Cop video, I thought we would watch a bit of it towards the end, in case you have been wondering this whole time what I've been referring to.
Okay, Idubbbz, I hear you. You're in the room with me right now. I hear you. I hear your request. I understand it. I can understand where it's coming from. And I guess have a policy that when there is a grade for an apology, I am just grading that discrete apology as I see it, without taking any consideration of prior or future behavior. If you're wanting me to comment on the overall behavior or the recent behavior from the clips that you have shown me, I believe that Ethan is a good person, and that eventually he will feel sorrow and will feel sorry and will apologize, and I will be there to evaluate that apology when it happens, which I know it will.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Unfortunately, Kirk did not change his grade.
Oh, I guess another thing to say is I'm glad that I didn't know that I was going to be so heavily featured at the end of his Content Cop video, because I knew that if he released another Content Cop video that it would get a lot of attention. As of right now, it's 2 days after it published. An airplane is going overhead, I don't know if you get, and the video has over 5 million views and counting. So if I knew that, I think I would have been too terrified to even get 2 words out while we were talking. So I guess it's a blessing in disguise. But anyway, when I watched this video yesterday, I was like, oh, sorry. I mean, I stand by that, but sorry. So that's genuine. This reaction here, he's just like, so he refused to change. And I heard from him that, yeah, I had to rewrite the ending because of that. Sorry.
But that's okay, because this is the internet. Anyone can have their own official apology rating system. So I'm going to rate Ethan's apology a B-. That's just based on my own feelings and my own rubric. When Psychology in Seattle was watching these video clips of Ethan, he said that it looks like Ethan could just use a hug. Now, of course, it kind of pisses me off to hear that shit, because I'm like, what are we doing? What are we saying? He needs a hug? No, he doesn't need a hug. He needs a good fucking ass whooping is what he needs. I think something that's very important to me in bringing back Content Cop is to be fair. I think that was something that was not illustrated in previous Content Cops that I think should have been, and probably wouldn't have left me with so much regret. Ethan deserves all of the criticism that he's getting. I think it's very valid. But I also think, at the end of the day, we should acknowledge that he's human, because he is human. And he is in a situation that's making him extremely scared, paranoid, defensive, sensitive, and I'm sure other features and feelings. In the spirit of Kirk...
I love this. I love it. I love it. The video is still very pointed and very critical, but to have, I'm having chills to have this epilogue or this ending or the climax of the video, to have it have this tone while still staying true to his voice. It's a new voice-ish, but it's still him. It's authentic. It's real. It's just music to my ears, and could be the dawn of a new age on YouTube. And if there's something that is going to get across, that's going to be convincing and inviting and welcoming while still being critical and still having consequences for Ethan, this is the approach, in my opinion. We'll see what happens.
Sensitive, and I'm sure other features and feelings. In the spirit of Kirk saying that it looks like Ethan could just use a hug, I have challenged some of his most powerful haters to put down the haterade and just say something nice and charitable about him, because I think he deserves it.
I just wanted to say that I respect that you are genuinely yourself on the internet. I think a lot of other people respect you for it as well. I think that's a big reason why people were drawn to your content in the first place. I think that's a lot of the reason why your employees chose to work with you over anyone else.
Ethan, I think it's respectable that you even began this journey to leave behind the anti-SJW crowd and step into a more empathetic worldview. I know it's not easy.
Ethan Klein, I think that when you are being goofy, when you're being silly, when you are being lighthearted, and just having fun with your friends, I think that is when you're at your best. So I'd love to see more.
I even feel guilty for causing Ian to reach out to these other content providers and making them or asking them to say something positive. I don't know. I feel funny about having influence in that way when I didn't know that that would happen. You know what I mean? I don't want to be inconvenient to anybody. So as I said at some point earlier in this video, I said I was going to end the video with someone attacking me because I was involved in the Content Cop video. And I'm not going to show their username or anything, but I wanted to show what love can do. And how if we all participate in that, then we can all make the world a better place. Not only just a happy rainbow unicorn place, but a meaningfully better place for us and our kids and our grandkids in the world. I don't say that lightly. I'm not the one who invented this idea. It's not even originated from our era. This has been around for centuries. So take that. But as an example, I knew that being in the content video would result in me being attacked because I know the internet. I didn't know if it would be Ian's fans or Ethan's fans or people that hate both of them, or I don't know. Or just sometimes I realize that just being noticeable on the internet just attracts people that have issues, disturbed individuals, or people that are deeply, deeply unhappy and use bullying as a way to just get a little inkling of happiness or distraction from their own extremely miserable lives. But anyway, so I'm not going to dox this person or show their username or anything, but this person DM'd me. I received a number of things like this, but he said, "Stay in your lane and stop internet diagnosing people, hack." One, I'm not a huge fan of people not using punctuation. There should be a comma there. Just stop internet diagnosing people, comma, hack. But anyway, so stay in your lane and stop internet diagnosing people, hack. So I was a little confused because in the Content Cop video, there's nothing approximating me diagnosing anyone, right? So I was wondering, is this just a random hater? But it had the feel and it had the immediacy of someone that had watched the video. But regardless, there's various different ways that I'll respond to this. Usually I won't respond at all, but one of the responses that I will have to things like this is just to ask a question. Don't get wordy. Just say, "Oh, tell me." And so I asked, who did I diagnose? That's all I asked. And given the screenshot that I took, it's actually hard for me to show both sides of the conversation. You're just going to have to trust me that that's what I said was, so who did I diagnose? Partly as a hope that what happens a lot of times that I find is that when a troll or someone who's hating you online, someone that's being really unreasonable, if you just acknowledge that they exist and show up as a human being, they will immediately soften. Not only because they're not that way in their real life, but also because they're desperate for contact. I have the benefit of growing up as a child as a very large kid. I was gargantuan compared to a lot of my classmates, particularly in the tween years, when I I hit puberty early. I was often mistaken for an adult when I was like 12 years old, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I would occasionally get bullied. Sometimes racism would happen. That's a funny way to put it. But I grew up in a primarily, almost completely white community, and I was regularly called, gook and Chinaman and all the things, and attacked and violently sometimes. But because I was large, I was never really that afraid, and I could defend myself. And I'll never forget that there was this one bully in junior high that was bullying me in the locker room, actually, after PE. And he was just pestering me with these insults and just, coming after me, and no one else was doing anything. And I was ignoring him at first, and then I would try to fire back, but he was better at it than I was, I think. And then eventually I just kind of lost my temper, and I just grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up and slammed him against the lockers. And he immediately apologized and was nice to me almost forever after that, I think. And he was always a bit of a dick all the time. But after that, he was not only just afraid of me, I guess, but I think it was weird that I've since understood this, that he was lonely. No one was acknowledging him because he was an outcast. I had friends. He did not. And in the locker room, it can be particularly noticeable, I think. And he just had an outburst, and he was looking for attention, and he couldn't get it, so he tried to get negative attention. And I gave him that negative attention, and it satisfied him. I acknowledged he was there. I showed him that he mattered in the world, that he has an effect on the world. Sometimes you'll take anything, even if it's negative attention, even if it's literally me throttling him and putting him in a powerless position where I could hurt him very badly. And that feels like it gets some need met, because so little of your needs are being met. I don't know, but I'm going to take a guess and say that his home life wasn't great. So when people will attack me online, especially when it's something like this, it has that look to it. That kid, when I was 13, peppering me with insults in the locker room. And so if I just turn to the person and acknowledge, so part of me was doing that by asking a question like, who did I diagnose? And not lowering myself trying to defend, you're a hack or whatever. The other reason why I asked the question, in part, was I am curious because I've made thousands of episodes online, and maybe I accidentally or I wasn't clear enough in my discussions that I'm not diagnosing someone from afar. I could see how that could happen at times. I am very careful about that. I've always been careful about that. But sometimes I make a mistake, or maybe it just requires me to clarify, well, actually, that isn't a diagnosis. And if you heard earlier, I was saying it was completely speculative, and I actually wasn't even talking about that cast member on reality TV. I was talking about a hypothetical client or whatever, And so I'll invite, and sometimes that's good feedback for me to receive. It's like, oh, I need to word that differently because someone interpreted it. So I was asking for both of the reasons. I mostly expected him to say, well, you're a jerk face. I don't want to, if you don't know, then you're even more of a hack. Like, you don't even know what you did, like, something like that. Or just someone not replying. But a lot of the times, what happens is what happened. So let me show you what they said. I acted extremely rash, rude, jumped the gun. I need to take time away from the screen. I apologize. I'm not sure why I felt the need to express any vitriol over internet drama that you seem to be kind of thrown in the middle of, and I misheard and interpreted what you said. Or vitriol in general, as it doesn't help anything. I hope you have a good rest of your week. And thing is, after reassessing what you actually said, I felt incredibly stupid and thought you handled the Idubbbz thing well. Not that my opinion matters on that. You are not a hack, and from what I've since read, you do some good stuff. I appreciate you helping people heal. I also just want to say again that my behavior is disappointing and unacceptable apologies to you. So not only is this a nice response, a good outcome of me asking that question, but this is like extremely positive, right? It's like, whoa. And this should illuminate things, not only in general, but also for people like Ethan, that the attacks that come are often not the full picture. If you give people a chance and you believe in them and you treat them like you believe in them and you don't participate in the fear and hatred feedback cycle, then goodness can happen not only just in the world, but to me. I did the thing that I talked about by not lowering myself, by believing in someone. I didn't know, but I wondered that if I just acknowledged or if I didn't participate in it, maybe he would. And there's many examples of this. Lindy West, actually, a local Seattleite, did a whole thing on this, through Gamergate 10, 15 years ago, I can't remember, and talked about this, and I think wrote about it a lot. So I'm not the first person to experience this kind of thing where you actually turn to a troll and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I actually am a fan of your, or whatever, So by doing this, not only am I putting goodness into the world, but I'm getting goodness back. And isn't that the golden rule, right? It's not just something you hear about in church. It's not just something that your parents tell you when you're 4. What comes around goes around. It's a real fucking phenomenon that has real empirical elements of a causal nature. There's a logical A, B, and C. Anyway, so I replied to him. Again, you can't see it, but it was something along the lines of, thank you. It's very heartwarming to read your response. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes sometimes. No biggie, that kind of thing. That's how I want to end this video. On the off chance that Ethan is watching or someone that's close to him is watching, I do believe in you, Ethan. I believe that you're a good person. I know you're a good person. You've demonstrated that many, many times. And I also, as Ian does as well, empathize with the harm that you have experienced, the real harm that you have been subjected to by people on the internet, by maybe even other content providers, Twitter, this sort of thing. It's unfair. It's not okay. I also will say that there are lifestyles regarding content provision that protects you so that you can live another day to make content. You're not sticking your head in the sand. You're not ignoring the criticism. You're not putting up an ivory tower or something, but you're monitoring how it is affecting your soul. And one of the first very noticeable signs you will see in your behavior, and this is shown in empirical science as well, that as you absorb more toxicity, the first sign, or one of the major signs that you're being affected, is you will lose empathy. You will lose the ability to care about other people's feelings because you're in a state of shock, essentially, and you don't have the capacity to care. We study this in my field. We call it secondary trauma or burnout or post-traumatic or vicarious trauma. As therapists, we will hear a lot of difficult traumatic stories. One of the things that will happen if we don't monitor it and have systems in place is, in our effort to help other people, we will absorb too much of it and we will lose empathy, and we won't be able to help any one of our clients because we've lost our empathy. We end up having negative points of view. We get annoyed with people, but also we don't have empathy for ourselves. We don't have empathy for people in our lives. Everything starts to fall apart, and it very much looks that way. And that is unsustainable. There is no way that Ethan can survive if he does not change that. He can hold his principles, he can hold his opinions, his core opinions. He can still fight back. But there has to be touching grass, as I was saying to Ian in that video. There has to be touching relationships grass. there has to be a vacation from it. And there has to be a system to protect you from absorbing too much of the negativity. No one can handle that. Even the great Ethan Klein cannot handle that. No one can. It's at the very least not good for you and your marriage and your health, but it could be bad for the world. It could be bad for your fans. It could be bad for your content. It could be bad for your friends, like what happened to Ian and Nisa. And I'm guessing many, many others around Ethan have also began to suffer because of what's been happening. So that's what I want to say. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. Spread the love, spread the empathy because we all deserve it. We really, really do.